what's good, guys? It's your boy D-Lie, and I'm back here with another video. I want to welcome all of you back to episode 3 on the Awake series. And on this episode, the dilemma continues with Robert Kiyosaki. Stay tuned. Thank you for staying with me. On the previous episode, we saw Robert Kiyosaki find himself in a dilemma where he was trying to decipher whether to go with the advice of his rich dad or the advice of his poor dad. On this episode, the dilemma continues. Let's see what Robert does. Let's find out who the rich dad was and who the poor dad was, whether it was the highly educated father or the father who never completed 8th grade. Join me as I journey with you in the thoughts of Robert Kiyosaki. Robert says, today, I often wonder what will happen when we have millions of people who need financial and medical assistance. They will be dependent upon their families or the government for financial support. What would happen when Medicare and Social Security run out of money? That's a very big question. That's a very, very big question. I mean, imagine losing the support of both your insurance and the support of your government. What are you going to do? I mean, what's going to happen? Like, I personally at this moment cannot even imagine it fully, because imagine Medicare is not working, Social Security is not working. How are people who are not financially prepared for life going to survive? How will a nation survive if teaching children about money is still left to the parents, most of whom will be or are already poor? Robert says, because I had two influential fathers, I learned from both of them. I had to think about each dad's advice, and in doing so, I gained valuable insight into the power and the effect of one's thoughts on one's life. How do you think as a person? This is a very, very big question, because many people do not actually realize how their thoughts affect their lives as a whole. As we go on, Robert breaks down the different thought patterns of both dads that help one to become rich and one to become poor. One to leave his family with millions and one to leave his family with debt. He said, for example, one dad had the habit of saying, I can't afford it. The other dad, on the other hand, forbade for such words to be uttered. The other dad forbade for such words to be used. He couldn't tolerate it because it didn't match up with the way he thinks. It didn't match up. One dad was comfortable with it. I can't afford it, okay, and the device you're actually looking for is about $5,000, and the first thing that comes to mind, I can't afford it. The one dad, on the other hand, forbade for such words to be used. You couldn't say, I can't afford it. It wasn't a language that was in his dictionary. So we find Robert in the middle, one dad so comfortably saying that, oh, I can't afford it, and another dad who wouldn't tolerate the use of such words. One is a statement and one is actually a question. I cannot afford it. That's a statement being made. The other dad forbade for such words to be used. Rather, he said to say, how can I afford it? Instead of saying that I cannot afford it, why don't you say, how can I afford it? One is a statement and one is actually a question. I can't afford it. That's a statement. You are making a statement that stands and gains roots in both your thought and in your spirit as well. But the other one is a question. How can I afford it? One statement lets you off the hook, and the other statement causes you to think, oh, I can't afford it. And then, you take your mind off it and then you move on. And then the other statement, how can I afford it? This causes you to be able to, this causes you to begin to rack your brain, because you begin to ask yourself questions like, okay, how can I afford it? This product is $5,000. What do I do? Robert says, my soon-to-be rich dad would explain that by automatically saying the words, I cannot afford it, your brain stops to work. By saying, I cannot afford it, your brain stops to work. This also didn't mean that, you should buy everything that you see, but there's something that, there are certain key things to actually learn from the actions and the thought patterns of this rich dad. Robert's rich dad was fanatical about, exercising your brain. And he said that the more you exercise your brain, the more money you make. The more he exercised his brain, the more money he made. The more you exercise your brain, the more money you make. When you ask yourself questions like, how can I, the more money you make. And he believed that the stronger his brain got, the more money he made. Because as he was exercising his brain by asking the relevant questions, more pathways were opened in his mind, more answers came to him, and then the more money he made. Robert's rich dad believed that the mere sign of actually saying I cannot afford it is a sign of mental laziness. You are refusing to think. You are refusing to think. So as Robert grew up, he noticed that one dad had a habit of actually putting his brain to sleep when it came to the topic of finances, and the other dad had the habit of exercising his brain when it came to the topic of finances. Even though both worked hard, this was the dividing feature between the rich dad and the poor dad. And the long-term result of this action by both dads, one exercising his brain and one keeping his brain lazy, led one to become financially free and one to remain poor. One dad grew strong financially and the other dad grew weak financially. This can actually be likened to one person who goes to the gym to exercise regularly. He's the one who gains the muscle compared to the one who sits on the couch watching television all day. The one who goes to the gym, exercising the muscles, doing all of that is the one who actually gains the muscles. But the one sitting on the couch doing nothing gains nothing. Just whiling away time and life. Proper physical exercise increases your chances for health, and proper mental exercise increases your chances for wealth. Robert's two dads had opposing attitudes which affected the way they thought. You see, one dad thought that the rich should pay more in taxes to help the less fortunate. Meanwhile, the other dad was thinking that taxes punish those who produce and reward those who do not produce. I mean, what a gap. What a gap in the thought lines of two men. Many people find themselves sitting and thinking just like the poor dad is thinking right now, that the rich should pay more taxes to help the less fortunate. So they tend to work hard and, one job after the other, and working, just like in the case of both dads, is very essential because as we have reviewed, both dads actually worked hard. One worked hard producing and the other worked hard actually not producing but actually owning. What do you think? What are your thoughts on the rich paying more taxes to help the less fortunate? I want to know your thoughts in the comment section. I'll see you in the next episode. Stay blessed.